Okay, now I can see myself
Space
again.
Shuttle, International Space Station.
Yeah, that's your own camera.
Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which was returned to the moon, Chuck, and a ton of other satellite type things. So if you want to work at NASA or for a contractor at NASA,
Yeah, I did that already. Just
Well, that's because it was on the call.
let me know.
this one.
And then see if we don't go down and go down.
I know that we opened a couple racks out there.
Yeah, if I have no, let me go back and see if I find the presentation here. I have it running. Does it show the actual presentation?
This one.
It's a start screenshot. I don't see you on here. Are you sure you're on the one I just sent out?
No, I'm not. I mean, because I have a bunch open down here.
It wouldn't be a meeting if you don't have a new technical challenge of the month. But I greatly appreciate Peter is very persistent about making sure that we are recorded online for future reference.
Okay, so can you find the email again? Is that the one you just received? So you should have two, which you said something about calling number 2. And
Trying to get him to join the Hangout so that he can actually share the slides that way versus having to shoot them off the screen.
I don't know why.
So if you haven't watched any of the recorded presentations, they're usually really good. Peter does a good job, and over time has definitely been learning, being able to build a better mousetrap for us. Yes, it's
This?
Yeah.
Alrighty. Does anybody have any ideas for the December meeting that they want to throw out there?
Same day.
Things they want to learn about, hear about?
That one.
Yeah, and then you go in and say,
Okay.
Don't make me talk about something I don't know about. Hey, I see you,
Now,
Brady.
this looks different than before.
Selfishly, I'm interested in alternate Android firmwares, so I've been screwing around with my phone and I've learned some nice things. But
so this is what we're right now. It's just
that's something that I know people are interested
This is
in
what I
here, and I
want to
got
see.
good suggestions on my
That's
phone.
what that
Kind of great.
Yeah.
4-year-old phone, I guess.
And I can adjust that.
One option.
Maybe if we don't have a long talk, we can do a short talk. I know we've done that.
This?
We actually did one meeting,
Nope.
probably only a half dozen of us, but we sat one.
This one?
Yeah, about 6 of us. Sitting around the table, we basically passed the microphone on the table and gave everybody a chance to speak a little bit. And that seemed to work out pretty well. So it appears they have this almost ready to go. So
I'll use the screen. You just keep on going.
So I just
I'll
close
take
this.
that. I'm not this. And you can
So I will
close
be back here in a.
so we can get going. I will adjust it.
Moments. But in that meantime, I'm gonna let Charlie go ahead.
Yeah, you will go ahead now.
And start talking about this FreeNAS solution. And I'll see everybody probably in about a half hour. I should be back. Thank you.
All right, and just to violate what he was just talking about, practicing standing up in front of a bunch of people, I'm going to sit in front of a bunch of people, if you don't mind, being inherently lazy, and that way I won't block anybody's view. So this was just one of my most recent projects. If somebody was going to build a network attached storage device, the obvious initial step you would take would be to conduct a cost-benefit study. You need to know what you were going to store and how big it was, and all of these other things that I've listed up here. I mean, that's what you ought to do, right? Or you might do something else. You might find this article in Linux format that talked about building a network attached storage device using FreeNAS and the HP microserver. I took a look at that article and said, gee, that looks neat. I think I'd like to do one of those. And I started trying to figure out how in the world I was going to get to buy all of that equipment and slip it past my wife so that I could actually carry out my project. And then I realized it actually wasn't all that expensive. Now, this particular article was back in July of this year, and it was based on the Generation 7 network attached storage, Generation 7 microserver. But then in November, Linux format came out with another article talking about the Generation 8. They really like it. By the time this one came out, I was actually in the process of putting together my NAS. But let's pretend that for a second that I hadn't already decided what I was going to do, and talk about what options you could consider if you were going to build a network attached storage device. There are plenty of purpose-built network attached storage devices out there. You could think about building one of them. You could assemble your own ITX machine. IX Systems, is that the way you pronounce that, Miles?
Yeah.
Has a similar FreeNAS Mini system that they use. And in fact, Miles assembled one of those. I told him he did the Cadillac approach, I did the Chevy. Or you could use a HP Proliant MiniServer Gen 8. And then on the software options, you could use just a server version of your favorite Linux distribution. You could build it on the using the software supplied with the HP Proliant MiniServer itself. Or you could use a purpose-built network attached storage distribution like FreeNAS, Open Media Vault, Open Filer, or the turnkey Linux NAS device. Lo and behold, surprise, I selected the MiniServer Gen 8 and the FreeNAS. The MiniServer Gen 8 has one CPU, 2 cores. It has 2 DIMM slots, a maximum of 16 gigabytes for RAM. It has 4 SATA hard drives. They are not hot swappable. It has a latchable bay door. The Generation 7 microserver actually had a lock on the bay door. And some reviewers have been displeased to see that in the Gen 8 there's no longer a lock there, it's only latchable. However, that latch is lockable, and I'll show you how that is done here in a minute. It has a built-in smart array, plenty of Ethernet ports, plenty of USB ports. The motherboard tray, you can just go to the back of the machine, push down a little release lever. You have to take off the cables that are connected to the motherboard, but then you push the release lever and you just pull the whole motherboard right out of the machine. You get at it to do tests or work on it. It only has one expansion slot. VGA graphics. It does not have a redundant power supply, only a single power supply. It's an amazingly small box, or at least seems small to me. It's basically a cube, 9 inches on a side. It has a built-in RAID controller, but that RAID controller only does RAID 0 and RAID 1.
Troy, would you go back to that slide for a second?
Yeah.
So, what's the advantage or disadvantage of having a dynamic smart array? What does that do for you?
I do not know the answer to that.
Okay.
I was just.
Can you back up maybe 2 slides? What is the difference between FreeNAS and Open File?
I don't know the answer to that one either. I'm sorry.
Okay.
If anybody else does know, I would be perfectly happy if you wanted to speak up and fill in the stuff that I don't know. The microserver comes in several different models. Basically, you have a choice of 3 different microprocessors. You can buy it with or without an optical drive, but with or without the hard drives. You can choose how much RAM, and the prices run from about $450 to $980. I chose the low end of that range, and the microserver miniserver as it comes has 2 gigabytes of RAM in it. I bought 2 8-gigabyte DIMMs and replaced that single 2 gigabyte stick, so that added $240 to the price. I also got a DVD drive. At first glance, I thought that it used the same DVD drive that a laptop uses, but it does not. You have to, if you want to put a DVD drive in it, you have to buy one that's specially made for this microserver. So that added another $100. And I got 4 hard drives. And so the total hardware cost that I put into the thing was about $1,200. And then I ordered it, and of course pins and needles until it finally shows up. And one day I come home and there it is, ready. And it's just like Christmas, but it's a little bit early. Now, aside from just the showmanship, the one thing I really wanted to show you here, and the picture doesn't come out very well, but if any of you have bought hard drives over by mail recently, you may have seen this, but I was really impressed with the bubble wrap that they put around those hard drives. They came each in a little custom-made bubble wrap sleeve. It was a very heavy-duty plastic, a lot of padding, and I really got the impression that that those hard drives were well protected during transport. Just to take you on a quick hardware tour, that's the front of the box, that's the back of the box. You can see that door which opens to allow you to slide the motherboard out. Over here is your one expansion slot. The power supply is arranged vertically along the back of the box, and the fan blows air across it rather than down the length of the power supply. The case is extremely easy to open. It has 2 captured screws back here. You back them out, slide the top case back about 1/4 of an inch, and then it lifts right off, exposing both sides and the top of the chassis in one easy step. This shows you one side with the 2 DIMM slots easily accessible. 4 slots for your hard drives. The chassis in general, I think, is extremely well made. It really comes across to me as being a quality commercial grade device, nothing like what you would see in a desktop computer. The one exception to that are the caddies that you load your hard drives in. They're simply made out of plastic, and the top and bottom rails are relatively thin and don't look like they would take a lot of abuse. On the other hand, if you're careful when you screw the hard drives into them, once they're installed in the unit, there's no reason for them to be taking any loads. The front just clicks shut with a magnetic latch. However, right here on the side is a little mechanical latch. If you slide it up, it unlocks. If you slide it down, when the door is locked, it locks the door shut. So if you're really concerned that somebody's going to get in there and monkey with your hard drives, you can lock the front door closed.
Charlie, are the two screws in the back also locked or not?
They are not locked, but there is a both the chassis and the sides and top that lift off have a, let's see, where am I going? Oh, I'm going the wrong direction.
Have a mechanism to put a lock on it, so it's kind of-
You can, yeah, you can put a lock on it. There, okay, here. They lock together right there. And you can see them again here and here. Okay, in the top, this is where the optical drive slides in. It installs with no hardware at all. It just clicks into place, and there is a power connection supplied up on the top. You have to run an SATA cable up the side of the device to get the signal in and out. I have read of other people putting SSDs in this same area and using the SSD instead of an optical device, and they seem to be pleased with the way it worked. Now, one of the main questions I had as I was starting this is, where in the world does the operating system go? I mean, I've got 4 nice big hard drives, but I wanted to use them for storage. So where do you put your operating system when you build a NAS? And I posted this question on our email server a few months ago, and I got all sorts of people coming back with suggestions. And Miles came up and suggested that I should put it on thumb drive. And I looked at that and I said, what a silly idea. Who's going to want to put the operating system for a computer on a thumb drive sticking out the front of your machine? And Miles, what were you thinking? I mean, that's the first thing. My cat's going to come up there and bite that thing and pull it out, or my wife is going to steal it and put Christmas pictures on it. I mean, that's just a silly way to put an operating system on a computer. Do you have anything to say in your defense?
That is actually the suggested method anymore.
Is that right?
Yes, either that or
However,
an internal SSD drive.
They make tiny ones.
very small ones, just plug in the back. And
Very
no one can see
small.
them.
Some server boards have internal USB.
Is that right?
Mine does have a
You
long
mean
one.
that damn thing is not where I'm supposed to be hiding the USB stick with my porno on it? I figured that's what that was for. Damn. Well, anyway.
That question?
Huh?
Did you ask us that question?
So, well, anyway, that's actually where your operating system goes. That's sort of an interesting piece of the design that I was not aware of before I started this little project, and something that I hadn't run into before. So maybe Miles knew what he was talking about after all. Oops.
Sorry, what is that you have highlighted?
It is a thumb drive. It's a weirdly shaped thumb drive, I admit. It has a strange angle cut on it, but that's just a regular USB port down there. And you just plug the thumb drive straight into the motherboard.
I believe they call those Type A.
I don't
If you're
know.
looking at specs, I believe they call them Type A.
You mean to distinguish them from other USB
Right.
connectors? But it's okay. But it's this.
Standard set is just standard USB. Type B is like the one that has to do with both.
Oh,
Well, this is, if you look on the side of this laptop, on the front or back of your desktop computer, it's exactly the same kind of port that happens to be on the motherboard of this thing. So
Is that USB 2 or USB 3?
I don't know the answer to that. It has
USB 3.
USB 3 on the back.
What color is it?
I think it's just white.
It's two. Everything tree is blue.
Okay.
Everything free is what?
Blue.
The sockets and the little connectors inside are blue.
Really?
That's a big difference.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think it'd make that big a deal, because you're not doing hard to do data wire over that.
Yeah. Well, in fact, I was wondering if anybody here really knew, but I'm not sure you're doing any data writing to it.
Well, it depends on how you have it.
Not system logs and stuff like that.
Minimal, probably.
Depends on how you set it up.
Yeah, you can always
Okay, so FreeNAS itself, it's BSD based, so it's not literally Linux, but it's similar. Supports a whole range of file sharing protocols. I don't even know what supporting exporting file or device extents via iSCSI means, but I'm sure somebody here does.
So that's one protocol of exporting storage besides SCSI.
Okay.
So you can boot a computer using your NAS box as the disk through a network connection.
Right.
Okay. It is compatible with Active Directory and LDAP. In fact, beginning with this version of FreeNAS, you can actually use the thing as a domain controller, in addition to being a network attached. You can run all sorts of UFS file systems or ZFS file systems on it. One of the things that tripped me up, quite frankly, as I got into this thing, I'd never dealt with ZFS. I didn't have any idea what it was, and actually didn't focus on it very clearly as I was taking off into this. I got into the process of configuring the device, and it told me that I should set up my pool and establish my data sets. And I said, huh? What the hell is that talking about? There's a whole set of special terminology that applies to ZFS file systems. And if you're going to get into playing with anything that's running ZFS, you would be well advised to learn the terminology before you get into it. Pools are roughly equivalent to RAID arrays, but they're not the same thing exactly. Data sets are roughly equivalent to folders within a RAID Z array. Z-vols are virtual block devices with backwards compatibility. They have snapshots, easy cloning, and a file system journal mechanism. In this file system, they have two different types of RAID, RAID Z1, which is roughly equivalent to a RAID 5, and RAID Z2, which is roughly equivalent to a RAID 6. They really encouraged you to go for a RAID 6. However, if a RAID 6 is designed to be able to completely recover from 2 hard drive failures, and if you only got 4 hard drives, but then the size of the array is the size of all your disks minus 2. And if you only got 4 disks to begin with, that's practically just like mirroring. And I didn't want to do that. So even though they strongly suggested going with the RAID 6, I actually did the RAID 5, the RAID Z1. Now here, as somebody mentioned earlier, for this operating system, they said the OS should be installed on a thumb drive or a compact flash storage device. And they warn you that if you install it on a hard drive, the FreeNAS will take over the entire drive, no matter how big it is. And that's why you really do not want to use one of your primary disks as the location for your operating system, thinking that maybe you could stick it in one corner of this monstrous disk and still use the rest for storage. It doesn't work that way. There are 32-bit and 64-bit versions available. but the FreeNAS documentation encourages you to run the 64-bit. Now, this is almost a direct quote out of their documentation. When I looked up what the hardware requirements are, and it says as much RAM as possible. That's the first time I think I've ever seen as bald a statement as that. However, it will run on less. And in fact, I settled on 16 gigabytes. USB 3 is disabled by default, so I guess that would answer the question. Well, not necessarily. So it makes moot whether I had any USB 3 plugs or not. Even though this software supports hot pluggable hard drives, my hardware doesn't support hot pluggable anyway, so that's another moot point. But if you
hardware requirement of ECC RAM. I've read up on ZFS and they highly recommend using ECC RAM.
Yeah,
Do they use anything other than ECC RAM anymore? Yeah. For desktop RAM.
Yeah, most motherboards let them move for you to buy it on those support.
Right, you have to go server grade to get ECC support.
So yeah, did you use that? That was one of the questions I had.
Yes. Yeah.
So this supports ECC.
It does support it. I don't know whether it requires it.
It doesn't require it, but one of the attractive things about using ZFS as a home user to me is the idea that I can maintain things on a hard disk for a long amount of time and be confident that you're protected with all the checks on the scrub disk and everything. You're happy with it. But if you're not using ECC memory, right, that's kind of like garbage in, garbage out, right? So that's why I was curious if you sprung for that.
I did. Okay, it has what to me was a different system for handling upgrades. Unlike all of the Linux distributions that I'm familiar with, where you'll get a different set of package every few days to install, the only way this operating system is upgraded is to basically reinstall the entire package. And you install it using essentially the same process that you did for the initial install. It's the upgrade process is built into the GUI that is used to control the system, and they do save the current operating system so that you could back up simply if you need to. Let's see what else is worth really noting here. Well, if anybody has any questions about any of that, we might put it before the group. Once again, these are all characteristics that were listed in their documentation, but I don't claim to know a lot about them.
So, on this slide, have you tried to do an upgrade?
No, I have not.
You have not.
Does it several times?
Okay.
The main thing you want to do is when you go into GUI, you save your configuration to your laptop. It's a web-based interface. Make sure you save that just so you have it. But generally, you can download the image and apply the checks on it and upgrade it, and it's fine.
And you can do that through the FreeNAS?
Through GUI, yes,
Yeah.
without issue. Now, one of the things that probably didn't have in the book was that under 93, the new version, it's a later version of BSD, so it actually supports mirrored images. So you'll find a point right now where using a 4 gig or even 8 gig USB drive is not going to be beneficial to your one that have to go with something larger, because what it allows you to do when you upgrade is you can keep separate image of separate boot image. So you have the ability, if you upgrade something doesn't work, you can fall back to the previous version. But now you're pretty much stuck. So what I usually do before I upgrade like this is I'm going to go through this process that I make sure I save my configuration, but you can go back and use this image on another, write that to another USB and use that to fall back on. But I've not found that the only problem I ever had with FreeNAS was using a white box and not using an Intel-based Ethernet card. If you're not using an Intel-based Ethernet card, you can run into all kinds of problems. That's one of the reasons why I just got fed up and decided to go with IX Systems FreeNAS, because of the fact that I knew all hardware was going to be completely supported. Because my earlier NIC card, I started into issues where really strange, where after I upgraded, the notes would come up, but I would get no Ethernet connectivity. I would literally have to upload the box 3 or 4 times before I decided to find a builder. And that was really tied to the Ethernet driver because of the Ethernet card. The embedded Ethernet card was on the board. So if you're going to choose any hardware, you're not going to run, use anything like Proliant Systems or whatever you decide to go. Just make sure that it's got an Intel-based card in it, and you won't have any problems.
Do you know for FreeNAS, does it support NFS and associated on safe life?
I don't know. For you.
I have not tried. I think in other instances, it's better.
Well, I know, but in some of the enterprise level solutions, right, rapidly ask that for you. So you put that it would make it
honestly, I'm not
pretty
trying.
attractive.
Okay, so if you were actually going to try to use FreeNAS, what do? Well, you can download an ISO from the internet, burn it to a live DVD. The installation process is controlled by a simple text-based menu system. You think you were back in the days of DOS. There are practically no selections to be made during the installation process. Basically, to designate the drive that you want to install the operating system to, and everything else is just by default. And interestingly enough, that the list that came up with the list of available drives included that plug on the motherboard where the USB thumb drive was installed. The installation was shockingly fast compared to how long it takes to do a normal Linux install. And I assume that that's probably because it's not divided into a bunch of individual packages. It's really a monolithic piece of software that's just all being written straight into the USB stick. When the installation is complete, you get a very simple text-based desktop. That's what that desktop looks like. These are the various pieces of configuration that you can do to the machine. And for normal usage, you go to another computer, plug that URL into your web browser, and then you get the GUI that you actually use to control FreeNAS. It's a very well-designed GUI, I think. I found it easy to use, and I'm still exploring it to find out what all it can do. But now, once you got to that first GUI, what do you do now? Well, you once again go to the internet, download the user guide for FreeNAS, and follow the instructions. I just went step by step through their installation, and it was very easy to follow. And not all that many different choices to be made. However, it is all a GUI, so it's definitely not controllable or not suitable for command line addicts. If you are totally addicted to the command line, you probably slowly go crazy. In fact, I'm amazed that Miles can use the thing. So you can use the GUI to set up your RAID arrays. You could use it to set up your entire directory structure if you want to. And in fact, the ZFS file system seems to expect you to do that because many of their extra features would only be accessible if you were using this kind of control system to establish the directories. Share drives supported are all of the normal ones that you would expect. It has quite an extensive reporting system built into it. Here I'm showing the system load and the CPU. This shows the activity on the individual disks. These are the first two disks here. You'd have to scroll down to see the other two. Or you can look at the storage operation on a partition basis. You can see here how much of the partition I'm actually using, and this is all free space up here. And that's basically it. Any questions or comments?
So, while I don't have a NAS box at home, I'm familiar with one of the problems that people I know had them over long periods of time. So the 4 disks that you bought today, when one of those disks goes south in 3.5 years, you may not be able to replace it with exactly the same model number of disks. How does FreeNAS or maybe the HP box itself handle getting 3 2 gig disks and one 4 gig disk, or sorry, 2 terabyte disk and one 4 terabyte disk? The smallest drive you can get in 3 years is 4 terabytes.
I haven't ever experienced that myself. My understanding is that if the others are 2 terabytes and you plug a 4 terabyte disk in, it's going to treat it as if it's a 2 terabyte disk. Does anybody know for sure?
That's right. But with ZFS, I believe there are other ways that you can take advantage of that. One of the things that when I switched over to IX systems is that with my old white box, first thing I did when I got the new IX system is because I already had my previous configuration up, although it was looking sporadically with the Ethernet, is that I just went ahead and exported the ZPool and moved the disk over into FreeNAS and brought it up and imported it into response. So if you want to do it again in the future, if you want to do any hardware upgrades, as long as you use the ZFS, you shouldn't have any problems as long as you go through the right process of exporting this route and then importing.
Okay.
Also, you can't, my understanding, once you have a pool, if you put, like I said, 4 terabyte array, it's going to see this too, and I don't think you can expand your ZPool.
Not until you upgrade all the drives.
Until you upgrade all the drives. But like what he's saying, you use, like, if you build another one on the side, you can use like ZSend and ZReceive.
Yeah.
Which we're all Solaris work, and it's phenomenal. This is phenomenal. One question I do have about NAS too, though, is I know Solaris 11's supports file mobilization with ZFS. Did that be added into version 9? Do we know, or is it?
I don't know.
No, that's not in the current open source ZFS.
That's what I thought.
You have to use an overlay.
So
But you can
do it, and you can make it compatible between 2 systems. That was one of the promises.
There's like a fuse. There's a fuse module for encrypting individual files that you can overlay on top of any file system.
Right. But as far as you can't make it compatible with Solaris 11 ZFS now.
No.
So that's completely 2 different
and we really haven't really discussed it, I'm actually doing it right now, is that there is a series of plugins that you can use. I'm actually running VirtualBox. I think about 7 different, I think I'm just running all separate, different distributions and sent those to others just because I use it as a training tool. I'm also running a Flex plugin so that I live all my DVDs because I can never get my wife to understand the DVD player.
So you're running FreeNAS and a VirtualBox device, or you're?
No, I actually on the Xbox I'm running the VirtualBox plugin. So I have like 7 servers at home that are running off of the FreeNAS box that I use for testing. I'm also running the Plex plugin so that all of our smart TVs can play all of our DVDs that are stored on the NAS box.
So all of the CPU activity that those virtual devices are doing is supported by the FreeNAS, by the CPU in your NAS?
Yeah. And I recently switched internet providers, and before I had to, because I was having such a frustrating environment where I live. I live in the boonies, and I have to use a wireless internet connection. And the providers, I had to basically explain to them all of their information, explain to them their issues with the technology. I had to keep a server running to run my smoke tape and all kinds of other stuff. It just made more sense rather than having a piece of hardware to run it off of a VirtualBox and then show them constantly all of the issues and downtime and the problems that I was having. So rather than dedicating them to the machine, I just used FreeNAS box and set up a version of out of VirtualBox there, and was able to collect all my data and provide it.
Okay, now where are you running VirtualBox software? Or I mean,
it's one of the plugins. If you go in and look on the side, there is a plugin module. One of the available plugin modules is VirtualBox.
Oh, okay.
In the same way as Plex, the same way as some of the media, you can even run a lot of the media sharing tools like Secure and all of the others. There's a whole list of plugins that you can actually install on FreeNAS to take advantage of some additional features. Things that they would have available.
I'm curious, did you pay $20?
I don't even know how. I mean, I'm getting like 10 megabytes per second transfer through my LAN into it, which I don't think is great. I suspect it's probably limited by something in the LAN itself rather than the NAS. Is that what you're getting at? Yeah. I don't know, what kind of write speeds are you getting?
That is something that I haven't done myself either. Adapt around to that. It's functioning, and I can use it. I just haven't had a chance to take it any level like that.
What should we be getting? What should we look for when we go back and do that?
It should be at least 100 megabytes a second, probably more like 200 megabytes a second.
Depends on how fast your LAN is. If you're not running gigabit, you're not going to get 100 megabytes a second. Right? So
The disks themselves should support.
Yeah. The disks themselves will certainly go a lot faster than 10. But if you've only got a 100 megabit switch or hub in your house, then that's going to be your first simplest choice.
And I don't think that would be much better because I'm doing everything wireless in the house. So
Yeah.
I would get a whole lot of true representation of things because everybody else wireless.
Any other comments or questions?
So I got a couple. About 6 or 7 years ago, actually maybe a little bit more than that, I actually had a FreeNAS box set up. I ran FreeNAS until about 4 years ago. Earlier versions, so go back a little bit, I had 3 or 4 computers all running. They were all hooked into a UPS box with power strips. And I had one set up as a master, and the other ones were all slaves to the master. So the master would basically plug out from the power UPS and house power belongs, and it would start a 30-second countdown, and then the power had to come back and kick out a message. So on FreeNAS, I actually had to set up a script and Tom Buda actually load the software. I was using ABC Ups, I think is that what it's called? Ups ABC. And as an agent, it's a slave agent on that box. Every time I pick it up, that's how I had to do it. What's the mechanism now for you to add in what I'm going to call a non-standard service on that? Because usually you have a name your script on Google. Do you have any way else that you can basically add in another service and have it run and start up?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to that either.
So, yeah,
I mean,
so
it's BSD in the background, right? So ultimately, my experience, I haven't used this. My brother set up a box and wanted me to configure some stuff for him. This was back when we sat and something like that. And so I SSH'd into his box in my house, and I made a couple hacks. And then, he would go in and do something on the web interface, and it would just stomp on the configuration file, right, that I've done. And so what it leads me to believe is that they're just using some sort of templating with Django to write config files. So my assumption, you have to test this, would be that if their service is not provided in their web service, that you're probably going to go hack configuration files down, or whatever you want, set it up in your C scripts.
yeah.
That's a guess. You probably can test that.
So, right. So the HP Proliant server doesn't, that hardware that you have for my situation doesn't hold any interest in it. Basically, because I have a 40 TV rack in my house, and anything I install is thrown in the slot. So the IX System Mini, is that also non-rack model?
Right, I appreciate it.
Okay.
It looks very much like what the microserver does.
Yeah.
But I do know that IX System does offer different hardware than you do have. Maybe one of those call and see what we got.
Right, so the hardware I've kind of been looking at is you can buy from ITX Depot, which is it's a 1U ITX case. You put an ITX motherboard in the back, and it's got 4 hot slots in the front. And my total cost of that is probably about $1,200. The case and the accessories probably about $6 or $650. Basically, I had an office using other things instead.
If you got a rack, if you got 40 computers in your house, I'm not doing eBay. That's my first chassis. You want people like $700 for the chassis.
I've got to tell you, I've been running IT. I've been doing my desktop at house, all my servers and everything for the last 8 years in the IT space, and I had zero failure on it. Well, I can't say that. I went on vacation. I came back from vacation. One of my boxes was running and unresponsive. And in the process of troubleshooting that, what was going on with it, it basically died. And so I started screwing around with the other one. So basically, I had 2 different boxes and the same thing happened in the crate. And freaking nature, I had 2 power supplies right down on me at the exact same time. Stuff was pretty good.
So what I've read on some of the forums for ZFS for home people, they use Norco, NLRCO. It's a 4U, and they have a 20 to 24 discovery chassis. And I think it's close. I'm not positive. But yeah, Norco, they sell them through, Android has them. I believe 100% that's now they're not enterprise grade from everything I read about them. But they're solid.
Okay, well, as long as we're talking about failure mechanisms, I'll fess up now. I mean, I got this thing, and I figured that I would put it together and play with it, and just to see what it could do. And I tell you, the first thing I've going through the documentation, and it was telling me all these different types of shares that I could set up, and I thought, well, hell, that'd be neat to see what an Apple share and a Unix share looks like. So I configured all of my storage arrays so that I had Unix, Windows, and Apple shares simultaneously running on them. And guess what? That doesn't work. You only can share it once at a time. You can't share it 3 different ways, and definitely not with 3 different protocols.
How do you know that you can't do that?
Well, I demonstrated that it doesn't work. So that's item number 1. And then it's like you go back and read the manual. You know what that acronym is, and it tells you not to do it. So if I had read a couple of the paragraphs further on, I might have not saved myself a hell of a lot of work there. And then you might remember as well that after I had this thing assembled and I put it on my network and I was trying to connect to it, and found out I couldn't connect anywhere. I'm thinking, what the hell is going on? And I discovered a number of things about my home network, and I basically had screwed up Samba on every box I was running. I mean, I opened up the Samba configuration process and went down the list and configured everything I could find. And I don't know what it was in there that I got screwed up, but I fixed them so that they would not network. And I went back and started with a blank Samba configuration file, and changed just the name of my work group, and I'm not sure I did much of anything beyond that, quite frankly, and all of a sudden I could connect through the network. And anyway, the thing is up and running and working just fine at home now.
Yeah, that was because it was FreeNAS or it was ZFS?
No, you mean the why this last one?
The first document.
Oh.
That was because of FreeNAS or ZFS.
I do not know.
So I run into this sometimes, but long story short, if everything's configured correctly, you technically can see that same storage at the same time, through those protocols. The problem is, especially with the first 2, with Unix and Windows file sharing, the locking semantics are different. So if you have multiple reader writers, then you'll absolutely have trouble. I don't know about Apple shares, but if you're just reading the data, you should probably be okay. Anything that requires writing the data for multiple writers is going to be difficult.
John, you have a question?
Yeah, my limited experience with commercial equipment is it's awfully noisy. You can't hear it. How's your ability not to go?
And in fact, if you read the reviews of this thing, there are various people that complained that the microserver was noisy. I think it's all a matter of your subjective reaction and what you're expecting. I didn't find it to be noticeably noisy at all, and the nature of the fan noise, and that's basically all you've got, is it's a very, very even, broad-based white noise, and it just fades into the background very quickly. It is a variable speed fan, and when it kicks on to high speed, it's more noticeable. When it settles out to running speed, I haven't found it objectionable at all.
Do you know if you can swap the fan?
I do not know that. Any other comments, questions?
Mine's upstairs in the closet. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Actually, that was going to be my question: does it have requirements for available space and cooling? Like, can you put it in a fairly small closet, close the door, and forget about it?
Well, my IX system's my FreeNAS Mini. So far, I've not noticed any issues, and I've got it upstairs in a, in a closet, and with the door shut, and I'm not walking and noticed any those temperature problems or anything like that. I guess if anything in a confined space like that, you could probably run into issues, but so far I have not.
I suspect that the limitations would be just based on ambient temperature rather than on the space and that sort of thing.
If you really want to have nice lights, don't run it as a media server. This is a file server. Don't put rotating disks in there, and this is SSDs instead. And you have no fans and no rotating things at all, and you just have a light. But it will cost you a lot more upfront. Less electricity.
Well, that was actually my next question. Have you done any benchmarking with a kilowatt or something else to figure out what sort of power draw that thing grabs?
No, I haven't.
Do you care?
I don't really care, but it might be
fine.
fun. I have a kilowatt. I'll stick it on it, and I'll post what it draws.
You said you had reds in there?
Did it have what?
What drives? No traditional red.
Oh, Jesus.
They look like reds.
I don't even remember
You
what
should
I
probably buy
said.
an extra terabyte one while you can still buy one.
Or reds.
Yeah, and that was my comment is, build one of these and put 4 drives in, not 6.
What are red?
Not 6.
Because it was graphics on the text
They're eating more toward NAS and
They just made it all the time.
And they have some green ones that are pretty slow getting up and running.
Yeah.
I made that mistake.
Be smart, so you can spin it down, spin it back up. So if you're running the racks and jam on it, you might be back and forth.
Does this answer your question?
Let's speak the model.
Yeah.
You're good at it.
If you have a photo of it, you could
So let me ask you a question. Why not a solid state?
Money.
Right. Space.
And you can't really get a 2 gigabyte solid state drive, at least not for human money.
It costs what, nearly $1,000 a piece?
You, just out of curiosity, you could theoretically save $100 on your configuration if you want to have an extra DVD drive that you can plug in.
In fact, yes, and I have one, but I was just playing around. I wasn't.
So,
But why even do?
well, a question for you would be, would an external DVD drive pass the CAT test?
What is the CAT test?
Yeah.
Oh, well, well, at least what I use it for is just for the initial installation of the hard drive, and after that's done, you unplug it, and the CAT test becomes smooth.
But you can't just transfer the image to the USB and just plug the USB in there without a CD. And that's the way I probably would approach it. All you need the CD drive for is installed. Do that on a separate computer. Plug it into the USB, take USB, plug it in the box, and boot it, and then configure all your drives and all that.
I think they have an image on their website for you to do that, just write directly to the flash drive without using a DVD.
That makes more sense. I mean, what else do you use the DVD drive for in box?
Nothing.
Kind of waste.
Could you rip directly to the drive with the DVD drive in there? Does it have ripping software?
I don't think it does. No.
Yeah, I'm sure it might be plugins for it.
Well, that's it then. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Still don't have any questions here.
Nope.
So I'll go offline.